Hi, I'm Sally Stubbs, and I'm really delighted to be with you. And what I'd like to talk with you about is about how to find our mojo, or how you can find your mojo. And that would imply that your mojo, my mojo, at some point has been lost, or a fragment of it has been lost. So before we go there, first of all, I'd just like to say that what I mean by mojo is your unique self, the self that you were born to be, your self that is your divine self, that's connected to, let's say, the divine intelligence. But before we go there, can we take a few moments together just to be with the flame of the candle? And could you be interested to just go along with me for a few moments and consider the flame of the candle like the flame of the home fire, the fire of our tribe, the welcoming fire, the fire of our community, and the fire of our amazing ancestors. And to think perhaps for a moment of ourselves as the hero return to the warmth and light of the fire and the tribe and the community, the battle over, and peace around the fire. And maybe together, as a tribe, a community, we could consider that we would hold hands for a few moments in our humanness, how we like to hold hands, the support and comfort and the peace in that. So before I carry on and talk with you a little more about how we can find our mojo, I'd really like to just take a few moments to introduce myself and where I'm coming from. So, when I was aged 18, I announced to my father, who is as tender as he is tough, that I was going to be a nurse at the Manchester Royal Infirmary. My father considered only for a few moments and announced that I wouldn't make a nurse, but I was determined. And I have had ideas throughout my life that determination came from something within myself, my pristine self or divine self, that is and always has been a carer. But I tell you, when I was 18 and I entered the Manchester Royal Infirmary, I was as probably emotionally immature as a 10 or 11-year-old child, and really I wasn't expecting such illness in those hospital wards. How naive. I thought that people were in comfortable beds surrounded by flowers and got well really quickly. But during those first few weeks, and I rarely share this with anybody, but I'm so happy to share it with this community, I had what I call a vision. And it was profound and it was defining for me. And the vision informed me that the mind can heal. Look, I've got lots of really good mates who are really great nurses, and that's it. Horses for courses, whatever the phrase, nursing wasn't for me. but the worlds within worlds of our amazing mind. That was for me. So off I went. I studied rigorously, researched psychology, parapsychology, you name it. I even dipped into neuroscience and quantum physics, as maybe some of you guys have. But here I am today, and talking about how we can find our mojo. So what happened in the next period of my life was, in the late 1970s, I had a crisis. And I experienced the horrible problems. And that's where my experience lies. And that's what I'll be talking about with you. Those horrible problems that I do know are debilitating, and they do preclude us from experiencing fully peace and love and joy and fun. Those type of problems, the anxieties, the fears. I'd jump a mile at a pin drop. I couldn't say no. I felt like people could walk all over me, tossing and turning at night, stressing and worrying, my weight yo-yoing. So although I'd been studying formally the mind, I now needed a therapist. And I really got involved in studying hypnotherapy and psychotherapy, because I personally needed to find the right way and the right path to permanently resolve those really horrible and debilitating problems. So let's consider how this can happen. How can we lose our mojo? This is where language becomes important, because we don't start to grow on up through life and irresponsibly lose our mojo. What happens is that that pristine self, born into life, wants to grow, wants to be nourished, wants to flourish, wants to maintain its connection with that divine intelligence. But here, perhaps, is a useful metaphor to explain something that to me is quite simple and yet has its complexities. So let's think of a metaphor as the amazing giant redwood tree and the seed of that amazing tree, which I think is sometimes called a burl rather than a seed, but I want to call it a seed. And let's consider, just for the sake of discussion together, that that seed is absolutely pristine, and that that seed falls into an environment or upon ground which does not fully nourish the growth of that seed. And so the giant redwood tree will grow lopsided rather than grow in wholeness. So let's consider then, through life, what happens. Perhaps, and in the majority of cases, well-meaning parents, well-meaning family, but that self is in an environment where it is not fully emotionally nourished. That baby, that infant, has certain needs. That baby, that infant that we've all been, is hardwired to seek emotional security as well as food and being warm and being comfortable and also being entertained. So here's one of the greatest truths I think I've learned in the last 30 years. What happens during those usually first 7 to 14 years of our life, that for most of us, our pristine self will experience something from the really bewildering to the scary to even the really frightening or terrifying. And what our unconscious mind does in those moments that are scary, the unconscious mind, so this is unconscious, what we do is we freeze time. So we freeze time in scary moments as a protective mechanism in an attempt to stop those next moments in time becoming even worse. And it's in those moments are born, paradoxically, the anxieties and the fears and the nervousness. And those experiences and problems and symptoms can remain dormant within the unconscious mind as such until maybe months or years go by and some kind of crisis or even catastrophe will trigger off those original difficult frozen moments. And then months or even years later, we feel something like we're in an emotional Groundhog Day, the same old thing over and over and over again, the tossing and turning at night, the inability to say no to food, the feeling of being like a doormat, not being able to stand up and say no, politely but firmly, to others. What our old and quite historical now hierarchy paradigm has led us to do, understandably, it's led us to want and to attempt by all kinds of means to get rid of those problems, those, I'm calling them everyday problems, but I've already said, I know personally how horrible they are, that we want to get rid of them. We go to the doctors or we get pills or we even take the herbs in an attempt to be calm and to get rid of those problem feelings. But here's the paradox. Those problem feelings are a signpost that will lead us to that fragment of our pristine, of our divine self that got lost and stuck somewhere in time as a protection mechanism. So what I'll be talking to you about and meeting with you again in the coming weeks, I hope, is how do we listen to, how do we explore those present day problems rather than get rid of them? How do we just hear them, listen to where they're leading us to help us find and free that fragment of our pristine or divine self. And for me, again, it's paradoxical it's almost like that fragment of our divine self needed something in the environment months or years after the original crisis to trigger those old feelings so that that fragment of ourself, can be found and freed and can grow into wholeness and make that pristine, that divine self where we're living in the present day complete and whole and always in a state of peace and an inner sense of love and joy and fun. And so I'm just wondering if you would like to just join me in the beginning of that kind of journey I've been talking about. It's an inner journey. That lost fragment of yourself, that lost part of your mojo is within you. And can we take a few moments together to comfortably and safely just begin just one step on that journey to you discovering in your own unique way a lost fragment of your divine, of your pristine self. And it's fun to call it a mojo. And the divine self, as we know, doesn't have an ego and doesn't mind being called a mojo. So let's begin. And as you are there, that's right, and you are breathing, just breathing, breathing life. And maybe wondering, would your breathing all by itself like to become a little slower or a little deeper? Or would your breathing just like to stay the same as you are there? And you can become a little more comfortable. It is nice to be comfortable. And you can choose to safely allow your mind to become like an observer just for a few moments. An observer that can look at yourself for a few moments from the outside And maybe for you, that observer could be like just an eye's view. Or maybe like a wonderful bird that from the outside, for just a few moments, can see you, yourself. From above, maybe, or just in front, or to one side or the other. And for those few safe moments that can seem like quite a long time, that from that observer place where you can have a different view, a different angle on what you need, and maybe just beginning to wonder what kind of healing could that fragment of yourself need, and what it needs, and what kind of healing it needs, rather than what you as an observer need and want for it. Safely, comfortably, beginning the first easy, safe step on a healing journey to yourself within. And in a few moments' time, I will say goodbye, and very much looking forward to being with you again. And you can stay there for a few more moments, and my voice will go with you. And from your observer position, remember to return within, bringing something new and wonderful